All right, welcome everyone to the MPO meeting today of the Old Colony Planning Council. Why don't I read the accessibility statements and then in the Title VI Notice of Protection, then I'll turn it over to Charlie with the roll call. So for accessibility statement, this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. If you would like these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 extension 202. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protection to beneficiaries regard to the federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is included on this meeting's agenda. Is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website at www.ocpcrpa.org. You can also contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 extension 202 for more information. All right, thank you for all that. We will do roll call, Charlie, and then we'll get into public comments.
Okay, City of Brockton, Brady Winston.
Hi, Charlie, I'm here.
Hi. Town of West Bridgewater, Meredith Anderson.
Here.
Town of Whitman, Dan Salvucci.
Here.
MassDOT, Steve Wolfel.
Here, representing the Secretary and CEO of MassDOT, Jamie Tesler.
MassDOT Highway, Pam Hasner. Brockton Area Transit, Michael Lambert. Old Colony Planning Council, Mary Waldron.
Good morning, everyone. I'm representing Christine Joy, President of the Old Colony Planning Council.
And I have not seen Lee Hartman yet, but we do have a quorum present as 7 of the 8 members are present.
All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comments. Any members of the public would like to address the MPO today? I don't see anyone raising their hand. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the minutes from the April 19, 2022 Old Colony MPO meeting. So can I get a motion and a second to approve these minutes?
I'll make that motion. Dan Salvucci from Whitman.
Mary Anderson from West Bridgewater, second.
All right, any changes or comments on the minutes? All right, not seeing any. Charlie, can you read the roll, please? Charlie, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Brady Winston, Brockton.
Yes.
Meredith Anderson,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Michael Lambert,
Yes.
Steve Wolfel,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
Mary Waldron,
Yes, and Lee Hartman came in.
and Lee Hartman. We're voting on the minutes. Last meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the update from the Brockton Area Transit Authority. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Update, just a very brief update from BAT today. Ridership continues to be stable. In fact, 2 weeks in a row, we were within 12 customers of an exact replication. Watching our COVID numbers carefully, obviously. Encourage everyone to wear a mask in crowded spaces. We received a safety grant from the Department of Industrial Accidents a couple weeks ago, and that's to cover general safety, general workplace safety, ergonomics, and an active shooter training. So we're happy about that and thankful for the funding. And that is our, and we are, we're in the process of making some good progress on our Rockland microtransit service. We have surveys out throughout the town of Rockland currently for both current and future customers. And that survey is available online as well. And we have an RFP out on the street to provide the service itself. So that's great news, and we'll provide more details on that as we get closer to launch.
All right, any questions for Mike? All right, thanks, Michael. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 5, which is a bunch of tip amendments. So I'll turn it over to you, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the MPO had released a tip amendment number 1 to a public review and comment period. In essence, what this tip amendment was doing was programming projects that would utilize additional funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law. So this went out to the public review period. However, during the public comment period, we had a consultation meeting with MassDOT and Federal Transit Administration, essentially stating this was the project listed was unfeasible because the project had technically already been applied for, so the utilization of flex funds was not doable. So staff is working on an alternative programming of projects, and with regard to TIP Amendment 1, staff is recommending that the MPO withdraw said amendment number 1 and not move forward with it.
All right, so based on what Charlie presented there, could I get a motion to withdraw amendment number 1 based on the feedback we got from FTA?
I'll make it Whitman.
Second,
All right, are there any questions or comments for Charlie? Seeing none, Charlie, can you read the roll, please?
Yes. Brady Winston, Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Meredith Anderson,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
yes.
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
yes,
Mary Waldron.
Yes.
Motion passes. Did we hear from Brady?
I was gonna say, Charlie, I missed my yes. I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you for that. So let's move on to amendment 2, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So offline, staff worked with Brockton Area Transit and MassDOT on an alternative scenario and came up with amendment number 2. And what this involves is the flexing of regional target funds to FTA for the purchase of 5 35-foot electric buses. And what this involves is $2.6 million in federal regional target dollars flexing over, and BAT is going to supplement that money with 53.7 carryover dollars in the amount of approximately $108,333, and the match will be provided by RTA CAP. And then on the next page is, next slide. Thank you. So this is the actual TIP amendment as it would look in E-STIP, and it's the 5th line down shows the BAT flexing of project money, and total project cost is approximately $5.4 million. Staff does recognize that timing of said amendment is critical as we're starting to roll through the federal fiscal year in a quick fashion, and staff is recommending that the MPO consider an abbreviated public comment period for said amendment. Perhaps instead of the normal 21 days for a public review and comment period, and then waiting for our next MPO meeting, which is in June 21st. And we're concerned about the timing of it going through the process on the back end through further state and federal processes. So we're recommending an abbreviated public comment period of closing the comment period on May 27th and not necessarily having an MPO meeting on the 27th to hear public comments, but if the MPO would consider this said amendment endorsed if we do not receive any negative comments. And we could send around an endorsement page on the 27th to MassDOT OTP for signature. And then we would forward that up the line.
So before I call for a motion a second, Andrew, I just want to make sure you guys are comfortable with, I know you're comfortable expediting, doing a shortened public comment period. I just want to make sure that last part Charlie brought up about, assuming we get no comments, that we can just do an endorsement page. We don't do that ad often, Charlie, so I want to make sure that a highway is okay before we go ahead and do that part.
Yeah, I think given, the unusual circumstances of Bill and kind of receiving this funding, we would like to see the funding obviously allocated as well. So I think allowing for that flexibility makes sense for us. As long as, it is in line with MPO board practices, I think there shouldn't be an issue from our end.
Okay, and Charlie, you would have suggested if it wasn't okay with the MPO's bylaws, so.
Yeah, we had looked at the public participation plan, and it does allow for an abbreviated public comment period. However,
does.
full disclosure to the board here is it doesn't mention whether or not that it would necessitate actually having a meeting, whether in person or virtual. So I think that will be on our to-do list to add that to the public participation plan, but absence of that, it does allow for an abbreviated public comment period.
All right, so is someone gonna make a motion as Charlie laid out with an expedited public comment period and the provision that we don't need to call a meeting if there's no comments. Obviously, if we do get comments, then we'll have to revisit adding another meeting. But does someone want to make that motion, Jenna, what Charlie stated, and I just restated, probably not as well as Charlie, but
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me. I will motion for that, Dan Salvucci.
Lee Hartman, second.
all right, are there any questions? Because this is so clear right now. So do you have any questions? All right, I don't see any questions or comments. So Charlie, please read the roll.
Brady Winston,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Meredith Anderson,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
Michael Lambert,
Yes.
Mary Waldron.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. So let's move on to agenda item 6, which is the 2023-2027 tip. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the MPO had released the draft tip to a public review and comment period. And in summary, as you know, it includes 11 road projects, 1 bridge project, and a menu of capital replacement items for the Brockton area transit. Next slide. So during the public comment period, we have a comment matrix coming up, but as we're just refreshing the list of projects here highlighted in blue, MassDOT had noted the need to program in 2 additional bridges as they had been inadvertently coded into a different MPO. So the first bridge is Duxbury Route 3 northbound, southbound over Franklin Street in 2023. Next slide. And then the second bridge to be added is the Powder Point Bridge, Ave Bridge in Duxbury. And this would be advanced constructed over multiple years, 2027 through 2030. Next slide. Next slide. So now we'll summarize the public comments, and the first one was the bridge projects. You can see that on your screen. And I note that this actual public comment matrix in its entirety with attachments will be included in the appendices of the endorsed tip document. Next slide. So we received a public comment from Town Engineer Mark Tisdale with regard to the Canton Summer and School Streets project, and Mr. Tisdale enumerated how and why this project is important to the town and requested that the MPO's consideration of including this in the programming of projects. I do note that this was actually in scenario 1. However, the MPO had selected scenario 2. But due to fiscal constraints, we looked at this and there's not enough financial capacity to add this project. Next slide. And noted here in the MPO's response on the right-hand side, it says, however, the MPO will consider programming this project should additional funding be realized in the tip. And next slide, should additional funding not be realized, the MPO will certainly seek to program the project in the next tip coming up. The MPO itself recognizes the importance of this project. And indeed, the town does have it under design, and it's a high crash location. So, we certainly support this project, but just due to financial constraint, it wasn't able to be brought in as in its entirety. So next was we brought this draft tip to the OCPC Board of Directors at their April meeting. They reviewed and approved it. We got comments from Andrew Riavan from Federal Highway, and basically it's programmatic questions, making sure that information is up to date and reflective of the current BIL law. And Andrew had some comments with regard to the posting of the draft document on the website. We did have it on the homepage, however, it wasn't actually on the MPO section of the website. So we're working offline going forward, and with the amendment that went out today, and later on we have a draft UPWP that hopefully it's going to go out for a public review and comment period. We're going to post that on the MPO section of the website as well. And as we're going through this, next slide, and Andrew had also asked about the annual obligation of projects, whether it was just posted in the document or on the website. We actually posted on the website first, and we're actually going to change that appendices. What we had was kind of a draft listing of the 2022 projects. However, what we have, since we have 22 hasn't been completed yet, we thought it would be more apropos if we included the actual annual obligations report that's posted on the website, and that's what we'll include as the appendices and make reference that it is also on the website. Another comment was from the Joint Transportation Committee. We brought the draft tip to them. They reviewed and approved it. Next series of comments was from Derek Schuster from MassDOT OTP. They used the MPO liaison tip checklist, and similar to Andrew's comments, programmatic changes, updates, and making sure that lists are complete. One of the things that we didn't have in the draft tip in its entirety was the full transit list. So, we'll certainly make sure that that's in the endorsed version. Next slide. And then from Glenn Geiler at Brockton Area Transit, Glenn noted that is working with MassDOT Rail and Transit to identify and program 2 operating assistance projects. One is in 2026 at $3 million total cost, and the second was in 2027 at $3 million. And next slide. Give folks a chance on the MPO. We didn't have room to put Mark Tisdale's full comment in the summary form, so we thought it would be appropriate to provide it here in the document, and the MPO wanted just to take a chance to glance at his comments in its entirety. Next slide. Mark's comments continue on this page. Again, a very good project. Staff supports the project. MassDOT has supported the project by approving it into the design process, and we'll work to program that in the future or sooner if additional funds become available. Next slide. So now for transparency, what we're going to do is run through the actual comments from Andrew from Federal Highway. And Sean, if you just kind of pan through these with a pause in between so the members can have a chance to see the actual comments. And staff is working behind the scenes to address all of these comments in the final version. Next slide. Might ask Andrew if, as we're going through these, if you have any additional thoughts or comments as we're going through this.
No, thank you for considering them. They're mostly for consideration as the MPO, but I think, like you said, it's a lot of kind of things to note as Bill has updated minor details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the comments. And
I remember these, yeah.
this is the MPO liaison tip checklist provided by Derek Schuster. So the good news on this is if it has a check mark and it's not highlighted, we're in good shape. However, if it's highlighted in yellow with a check mark, that's, hey, play close attention, just make sure you update this. Or if it's highlighted in yellow with an X, that's extra attention needed. So, Bill McNulty and myself are working to address these comments. I wouldn't characterize any of these as a fatal flaw in the draft tip. I think it's
Oh.
more for clarification or programmatic information. So I think we can certainly say full certainty we'll address all these comments satisfactorily in the final version. Next slide.
Not a big deal.
So I think one of the things that I think from a staff perspective here, having a check like this is really helpful. The way it's laid out here, so we can just go through it as we're coming up with the final version too.
Yeah.
And for all of you who know how organized and detailed oriented Charlie is, this is really, I mean, it is really helpful and acknowledge not only his proficiency and Bill's working with Charlie on, making sure that things are just not always on Charlie's plate as well. So thank you for the form. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, so thank you, Mary. So one of the good things is as we're going through a public comment period, comments from federal partners and state partners and regional transit partners is we hope that we don't get a comment that says, hey, you need to remove this project because it's not moving forward or it's infeasible or whatnot. So, we consider this a successful navigation of the public comment period. Next slide. And, I believe that's the last page of the comments. Yep. Could you go back up one? Yeah, thank you. So that's the public comments. From the comments received, staff is working on the final version. We should have that shortly, but we believe we navigated the public comment period successfully.
All right, so I think we're ready to make a motion second, and let me see if I can frame it. So it's obviously to endorse the full tip with the highway and transit elements with the checklist items from MassDOT as well as for the highway, and as the current list of projects as they went out for public comment. Is anyone willing to make that motion and second it? Did I get that right, Charlie, first? I think I got it right, correct?
Yes, the MPO checklist sheet, Andrew's comments, and then the 2 additional bridge projects. But I did note Pam Hasner has her hand up.
Well, I was going to take a motion second and then do questions like usual. So,
Okay.
does someone want to make a motion a second as I presented with Charlie?
Okay. I'll make a motion. Dan from Whitman. Jump in, Lee.
Lee Hartman, second.
No peer pressure or anything, Lee. All right, Pam, go ahead. You have a question?
Actually, a comment on the Stoughton project that Charlie mentioned, just to reinforce what Charlie said. The project is moving along. I double checked as Charlie was going through the comments. The 25% design submission is expected this September. And as we all know, the TIP is a very dynamic process. So, as that moves and other projects move, we'll see where that falls during the, this cycle and the next cycle. So, I mean, it is moving, it is on track to continue to move ahead and be advertised, and depending on how other projects go and any additional funding, I think it would be successful. It is a good project and we do support it.
All right, anyone else have any questions or comments? Lee, are you trying to say something?
Nope.
All right, the thing around your box lit up. Charlie, what do you got?
Well, not so much for programming of projects per se, but Senator Brady had been speaking over the weekend with some constituents, and a constituent had inquired about the Summer Grove, Lyman, and Grove Street Bridge project, and it is indeed programmed in 2025. And I believe Senator Brady's chief of staff is on the call today, Al. And most recently, Pam Hasner had forwarded over the bridge inspection report that specified the deficiencies in the bridge, hence the weight restriction on the bridge. I wanted to thank Pam for sending that information along.
Senator Brady is on also, so I'll let him speak.
All right, Senator, you want to say something?
Welcome.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that get brought to my attention. Obviously, the bridge at Grove Street, and I've been told by constituents that the BAT buses cannot travel over there because of safety concerns with the bridge. And I don't know, I did get an email from Charlie, thank you, but I don't know what the restrictions were, because they are telling me that, like, the Trojan Oil Company's driving their trucks over the bridge and many other heavyweight vehicles. And obviously we want to adhere to public safety. And I did understand that there's a timeline of 2025 for the project. And I don't know if that's completion or the actual construction repair of the bridge. So if you could just bring me up to speed with that. And adding on to that question, I know, obviously Governor Baker's not running for re-election, so we're going to have a new governor no matter who that is. So does that change anything with Mass DOT? The other areas I've got inquisitions about is the intersection on Main Street down in the Campello section of Brockton, where the Brockton Housing Authority, the A building, it's their entrance. I believe the address is 1380 Main Street. Some of the residents were concerned because elderly people have been struck and killed there. They're in hospitals because they get hit by cars. If there was any plans to put any lights there. And I did speak to the housing authority. They are looking to maybe take down one of the buildings and build a whole new building there. So that could adhere to what's going to be constructed there regarding the intersection. And my last one is on Route 18 in 106, the Elmwood section of East Bridgewater. Somebody had asked the question, because of cars speeding there, et cetera, if there's any idea of putting a rotary there. So like some areas, I know on Route 14 in Duxbury, there's a rotary there that slowed down traffic. I don't know if it's feasible. I don't know if it's the best idea. I'm just kind of throwing the question out there, and I adhere to you, the experts on the line today. And my last thing is just to keep us up to speed, if you want to send to my office, if you have not already, any projects or things on the line, so we can just keep up to speed in case I do get any inquisitions from my constituents that's in my district. And to let you know, next year, Avon and the town of Randolph, the southern end, will be in the new district. So if you guys have any things going on in those two towns, I know that's more Norfolk County, but and I'm sorry to hit you with a million questions at once, but I'll shut up and let you guys speak. Thank you.
Senator, you're always welcome to say anything here. In terms of the change of governor issue, these, the MPO is the arbiter of what happens with federal funds. So if it's on the tip, as long as this continues to be progress, the project will continue to advance. Charlie, I don't know if you want to address the senator's other comments, or Pam, if you had anything to add with some of those.
So the thank you, Senator Brady, for being on the call and for the inquiries. The Summer Lyman and Grove Street project is in 2025 for funding, and what that represents is the year of advertisement for the project, not the end date for the construction. We did work with MassDOT to see if that project could come earlier in terms of project readiness, and it was conceivable that if you could advance it by a quarter, where the prospective advertisement date is in December 2024, which is first quarter federal 25. If you could move it to fourth quarter 24, it wouldn't make a difference in the actual construction of the project, because the advertisement cycle would happen over the winter, and the construction wouldn't start until the spring. And with regard to the Route 18 project, 106 at Route 18, MassDOT had hired Tool Design, and they actually did a road safety audit at that intersection in 2020. And I believe MassDOT has a project identified for that location, and it's very early in the design process. And design
Not a rotary.
scenarios would be considered as part of the design process, whether it's different signals or other treatments such as a roundabout.
And I'm not advocating on behalf of
Right.
Rotary. I just want to listen to you guys are the experts, what you feel is best for that intersection.
And with regard to that intersection, on not only that intersection, but to a larger scale, later on in the meeting today, we're going to talk about a planning study coming up as part of our work program. And we propose to do a Route 18 corridor study in the communities of East Bridgewater and Bridgewater, Route 18 in its entirety. So that would certainly revisit that location. And during the process, we would certainly involve the communities and stakeholders and as part of the project development process and planning process. As
Right.
far,
In regards to the Grove Street, Lyman Street area, what are the recommendations? Because if the BAT buses cannot travel over that bridge, is it unsafe for other heavy equipment to go over that bridge?
Fire engines go over it.
I guess
So
I
my-
can add to that, and there is a weight posting on the bridge. The Jersey barrier, the barrier is on the bridge for a reason. There are issues with the beam ends. And the section that's cordoned off, that's the more deteriorated section. Interestingly enough, one of the photos in the bridge report did show, it looked like an oil truck must have just gone over the bridge. I do not off the top of my head know what weight limits are for different vehicles compared to what the posting is. However, I'm assuming that those are probably too heavy, but it's really, I would say it's more of an enforcement issue. We can do the engineering aspect of it and, test for, what structurally, what the bridge should be handling. But as far as, we can't really, be out there telling the different vehicles to not go over it. They should be aware of that. I think it's all, regulation.
Is the city been involved with enforcement at all?
I don't know. I know the city does get the bridge inspection reports. When we do bridge inspections, we do send them out to all of the reports to the different municipalities.
So,
'Cause I reached out before I found out the Old Colony Planning Council was involved. I had reached out to the city highway department in the DPW. Now, I didn't catch their bosses. It was a Friday afternoon, but no one seemed to know anything ironically about it on the city side, and they haven't.
Senator, if I could, sorry for interrupting, but Chike is on, and I would suggest, I know that Brady Winston from the mayor's office is on, but Brady and Chike, maybe if you and maybe Commissioner Pat Hill can schedule a time with the senator through Al, and I think that's the best route in terms of
Thank you.
entrance.
That
Number
would
of
be great.
I was
Because,
going to suggest the same thing, Mary. So, yeah.
thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, because I know it was a late in a Friday afternoon when my constituent called me about it, and I run into an elderly person that, obviously can't get the BAT bus to go up there to pick her up, and she's elderly, and that's how the whole thing started.
Okay. And Mary, just keep an eye and make sure that that meeting happens. Okay.
we will, we'll coordinate through.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
that. All right. Now, do we have any other questions? We have a motion and a second. So we have action on the table. Are there any other questions about the 2023 to 2027 tip as presented and motioned and second? All right, seeing that there are no more questions, Charlie, you want to read the roll, please?
yes, Brady Winston,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Meredith Anderson,
Yes.
Dan Salabucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
and Mary Waldron.
Yes,
Unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charlie. We will now move on to agenda item 7, which is the draft federal fiscal year 2023 UPWP. Charlie, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 2023 Unified Planning Work Program is essentially a scope of work and budget for the upcoming federal fiscal year for the transportation staff of the MPO. And on your next slide begins a list of the table of contents and the elements within the UPWP itself. The introduction, kind of housekeeping items talking about the national planning factors, Title VI, how is this document funded, and note that the UPWP is funded by Federal Highway, Federal Transit, MassDOT, and the Brockton Area Transit. In sum total, it's about a $1.22 million program for the upcoming federal fiscal year. And importantly, introduction section includes a geographic distribution of major projects, and we've added in information on how traffic counts, local technical assistance studies, and the like have been provided to the communities beginning in 2015 to the end of 2021. And the rest of the UPWP is broken into 4 main sections. Task 1000 is management and support of the planning process and certification activities. That includes the development of the Transportation Improvement Program, implementation of our Title VI program, public participation, and the like. Task 2000 is data reconnaissance, acquisition and analysis activities. And that includes such items as the operation of the management systems, which we have congestion, pavement, and safety. It also involves the operation of our travel demand model. Also included in task 2000 is our transportation data collection program, where that's the traffic counts. And one of the exciting features of this program is we have 3 certified drone pilots, and this includes operation of our OCPC drone. And most recently, staff has been working with Larry Harmon down at Bridgewater State University on flying techniques, and that's been a great partnership, and collaboration. Next slide. Task 3000 is short and long range transportation planning activities, and this tends to be more of the discretionary area of the Unified Planning Work Program. And you will note that there are 3 specific projects in here that staff will be undertaking. One is the Route 18 corridor study that was previously mentioned. It's Bridgewater and East Bridgewater, so staff will be looking at existing conditions, forecasting future conditions, developing recommendations for that area. And something that we're all looking forward to is the development of the long-range transportation plan. This is a 20-year look forward needs assessment of the transportation system of the region. It's multimodal, looking at bike ped, transit, highway. We're going to incorporate socioeconomic forecasts and projections with regard to population, employment, and households, and come up with a menu of items that's physically constrained for improvements to the system to address safety and mobility over the next 20 years. And this is done every 4 years. And another project we're going to be including in this work program is the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. And we've aligned the update of this plan to be concurrent every 4 years with the long range plan. And this will certainly be a complementary element to the long range plan, but it's a necessary element to have updated as service providers such as Brockton Area Transit use this plan as a reference guide for when they're applying for grants for the Community Transit Grant Program. And then task 4000 is rounding out the program, and we have transit technical assistance, and then an item for BAT planning and technical studies. And a note for the BAT studies, each project will be scoped in a specific contract with Brockton Area Transit before we we enter into the actual planning process for those studies. And then we have an appendices with several items such as endorsement, but then we're including self-certification statements, budget, glossary of terms, and similar with the tip where we included the public comments, we're going to include any public comments in the fully endorsed document. And then on the next page is a little hard to read, but this is a specific presentation of the individual tasks with the budget amounts aligned with each task. And just to recap, it's a sum total of about $1.22 million. And shout out and thank you to MassDOT for providing the match to the federal funds. So this is an action item for the MPO to ultimately release this to a public comment period following any questions that the board may have. And then at your next meeting in June, hear public comments and then consider endorsement of said Unified Planning Work Program.
All right, can I get a motion second to release the federal fiscal year 2023 UPWP out for public comment, and then I'll open up to questions.
And I'll make that motion, Dan from Whitman.
Lee Hartman, second.
Any questions for Charlie on the UPWP draft before it goes up for public comment?
Yeah, Charlie, Dan from Whitman, if I may, through the
Yeah, go ahead,
chair,
Dan.
question. The Route 18 corridors study between Bridgewater and East Bridgewater. Is that gonna begin at the East Bridgewater line on Route 18 and go all the way to the Rotary and Middleborough Rotary, or stop before the Middleborough Rotary? Only because that's the truck route and I'm hearing that they're looking to put in a lot of construction and work areas down by the old factories in Bridgewater and East Bridgewater along Route 18 before you get to Sullivan Tire, that area there, and before you get to the medical center. And it's trucks a lot, and I'm wondering if looking at that, widening the road would be in the best interest because of that increased traffic. Just something to think about.
So what staff poses to do for geographic scope of the project is Route 18 in its entirety in both communities of East Bridgewater and Bridgewater. So,
Yeah.
so it will begin on the northerly section at the Whitman East Bridgewater line and southerly to the Bridgewater Middleborough line to the south. It's about 9 miles that we'll be looking at. So it would definitely include that area that you had referenced. And just as an aside, Compass Medical has plans to expand their facility, and the land use is current land use and forecast land use is something certainly important that we'll be looking at as part of the study as well.
All right, you all set, Dan?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, Charlie, can you read the roll?
Brady Winston,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Meredith Anderson,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes,
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Pam Hasner,
Yes.
Mary Waldron.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for that. Thank you, Charlie. All right, so next agenda item, it's agenda item 8. It's Beyond Mobility. It's an update on our statewide long-range transportation plan. And Derek, are you doing it or is Raisa?
This will be Raisa.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen. Oh, okay. So sorry, I'm not able to share my screen, but I will start presenting. So
you can now. I just made you a
I
co-host.
can. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
there you go.
Yep.
Beyond Mobility. So hello, my name is Raisa. I'm the MPO liaison from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, and I'm going to provide more information and an overview on the next statewide long-range transportation plan called Beyond Mobility. So the purpose of the plan is to create a vision and a statement that will guide the future of transportation in Massachusetts, and also guide future capital planning at the agency. The statewide long-range transportation plan, the last statewide long-range transportation plan, called We Move Massachusetts, was completed in 2014 and guided current capital investment planning. So this plan will help set the stage for the next revamp of the capital planning process through an extensive public engagement process.
Wow.
So this slide summarizes the task within the scope of work for the long-range plan, which we've categorized into four overarching categories. The assessment phase will involve tasks such as an existing conditions analysis, analyzing the most pressing trends facing Massachusetts transportation planning, and defining the network for a site-specific needs analysis. The visioning phase will involve extensive public and stakeholder engagement and will entail crafting a vision based on input from the public and stakeholders. The evaluation phase will also involve public engagement, but will be based more on assessing public input on a variety of trade-offs. For example, when it comes to allocating limited resources for transportation, which projects are the greatest priority? Questions like this will be assessed as part of this stage. The final stage will involve recommendations based on this input and other analysis. Recommendations may be related to restructuring the capital planning framework, organizational, policy related, or location specific. We are currently in the visioning phase of the long-range planning process to define how Massachusetts residents envision the transportation system best serving them in the future, and what pressing barriers are. So far, we have completed multilingual focus groups and have launched a website and public survey to begin gathering input. Additional stakeholder meetings will be held throughout summer 2022. So thank you for listening. This slide provides some background on some more information where there's a QR code. We will share this presentation. There's a link to the website, and there's a link to a video and the plan website. Please help spread the word. And that's the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Arisa. Does anyone have any questions as we're just
Okay,
getting?
good.
Dan, do you have some questions or a question? Okay.
No, I thought it was a very good presentation.
All right. Anyone have any questions?
No questions, but Raisa knows this, that we have been promoting it on our social media and our newsletter, and we're at every time we can, we're gonna be able to do this. So thank you.
We appreciate that, Mary. All right, thanks, Raisa. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 9, freight planning and action plan update. Charlie, who's doing this?
Is Ray Guarino?
Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next slide. That's not the first slide. There we go. Okay. Next slide, please. Our study purpose for the freight plan is to identify the freight needs in our region and also to integrate freight planning in the overall process. We're planning for the long term to accommodate future levels of freight, and includes identifying projects that could improve movement of freight in the region. Next slide, please. The latest federal statutes that are important to movement of freight are Moving Ahead for Progress and Fixing America, the FAST Act of 2015. Although the previous statutes required freight planning, what's important in these latest two is that they require performance measures, setting goals to meet measured targets for tracking freight performance. And the latest statute, the bipartisan infrastructure law, also includes those performance targets, but also includes additional funding for freight rail modernization and expansion of passenger rail, and et cetera, and some grants for the Northeast Corridor Amtrak. So next, please. The performance measures that have been adopted by Mass DOT and Old Colony MPO are in safety, infrastructure, and system performance. The third one, system performance, is more specific to freight movement, although all of the performance measures are important for freight. Safety and infrastructure obviously are important for freight movement. But the last one is applied specifically for freight, and that's the percent of person miles on the interstate highway that are reliable. And on non-interstate NHS system, also the percent of person miles that are reliable, and the truck travel time reliability index. Next, please. This is the report from the Federal Highway Administration on Massachusetts performance measure targets. And as you can see, the baseline was 2017 for these performance measures. And the actual in 2019, and the target was 68%, and actual was 69.1% for the interstate system, percent of person miles on the interstate system that are reliable. On the non-interstate system, we hit 82.4%, and truck travel time reliability on the interstate was 1.86 in 2019. And our 4-year target for 2021 is 68%, 80%, and 1.85%. Next, please. I pulled this information, this map, from the INRIX RIDIS, which is actually where the FHWA also, it's the same source of information. And this is for the year 2021. So we're at 1.61%. Well, I'm sorry, the index is 1.61 for the TTTRI. And this is the interstate map for Massachusetts truck travel time reliability. You can see the closer we get into Boston, it's over, it's like 2%, it's over 2. And around Lowell, some areas, and other areas on I-495 and on I-90. Next, please. This is the same information, but for the 2.5 miles of interstate that are in the our MPO. And so we're at 1.33 for 2021. We only have about 2.5 miles of interstate highway I-495, which is in Bridgewater. It's where Route 24 and I-95 meet. Next, please. This is for the MPO, year 2017 on the left, 2019, and 2021. This is for the non-interstate NHS travel time reliability, the percentage that is reliable. And our target is 80%. And we have met that target, and
Yeah.
we're actually a little bit better. So this is all the principal arterials or the NHS system that's not interstate in our region. And I believe there's about 354 miles of our highways. Next, please. So for our freight study, we developed a freight profile of the region. That includes the transportation infrastructure, physical operational attributes for the key modes of travel, key routes and facilities, traffic volumes. And also, we also compile information on commodity flow, the tonnage and value of freight into, out of, and through the region. We don't have that specifically for our region, but as I'll show in another slide, we do have it for Eastern Massachusetts. And of course, safety is important too, as part of our profile. Next, please. The freight analysis framework is a model that was developed for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and that's to discern freight movement and activity. So this map in the middle shows the Boston area zone, and you can see that Old Colony Planning Council is part of that that traffic model zone. So these statistics here are for the whole Boston area, not just for the Old Colony region. But you can see the different commodities that are shipped. The top 10 on the left is in value. It's the top 10 commodities in value that are shipped in and out of the region or through the region, through the Boston area zone, and pharmaceuticals, mixed freight, electronics, etc. And then on the right, we have in tons shipped the commodities, coal, gasoline, gravel, etc. Next, please. These also from the freight the FAF is the in mode, the tons shipped in Massachusetts. So this is for the state, the entire state, from the freight analysis framework. And what it shows us is the primary mode for moving freight in Massachusetts is by truck. And also the trucking is the primary mode used for the movement of goods to and from through the Old Colony region. Obviously, Boston has a port. So when you see water, that's mostly Boston. Old Colony doesn't have a port. We also don't have, we have airports, but our airports are for passenger travel. There's no significant movement of goods. So mostly by rail and by truck, most of the goods, and by pipeline in our region, to, from, and through our region. Next, please. So I did want to say something about railroads, because we do have CSX operating in the Old Colony region. They operate through Brockton. As people who walk through Brockton Center know, you can see the CSX lines. But I did want to say something about what's happening in rail. And this isn't just happening in Massachusetts, but it's happening throughout the country. It's something called precision scheduled railroading. And it's a different concept. It's a new concept where trains are where goods are shipped on schedule. Before, in the old way they used to do things, they used to create unit trains, and they would have hub and spoke operations. But now what they've done is they've changed things so that they have a scheduled freight movement, and they simplified the routing networks. And this is all to achieve a lower operating costs. So they want to make, for every, say, 50 cents that they spend, they want to make another 50 cents on the dollar. So for every dollar that they take in, they want to get that amount of money that they pay to ship those goods as low as possible. So if they're spending 60 cents on the dollar, that they're pretty good. If they get 50 cents on the dollar, it's even better for them. So that's the new kind of movement that's taken over. And CSX uses, they're the major shipper, major rail operator in Massachusetts. I believe they just bought the line that goes up into Lowell and Nashua, also from Pan Am. Next, please. We also, in our freight study, have located the freight operators and distribution centers in the region. And most of those are along, obviously, Route 24, Route 28 and 18, and mostly in the Brockton region, West Bridgewater, Stoughton, but also in other parts of the region. Plymouth has some along Route 3 and Route 44 as well. Next, please. We looked at traffic volumes and congestion and also crash analysis. And mapping it out, you can see the heaviest volumes along Route 24, Route 3, Route 495, but also Route 27 and Route 28 again, and Route 18, heavy vehicle volumes. These are not just trucks, these are all vehicles. Oh, could you go back, please? I just wanted to just talk about the crash map. We were able, thank you, Andrew, to extract, and also shout out to Mass DOT for locating crashes. We were able to extract all the crashes that were involving trucks, and we actually located them. And so you can see a great many of them are in Brockton, but there's also a lot of truck volume there too. So there's a lot more exposure for trucks in the Brockton area. Okay, next, please. And we've also looked at the types of crashes being important. Brockton and Plymouth, they had the most trucks hitting fixed objects along the side of the road. And that's a big problem for trucks when they're making turning movements. It also hitting bridges. And we noticed that on Court Street in Brockton, the bridge was hit 9 times in a 4-year period. In Kingston, the Landing Road Bridge was hit 5 times in the 4-year period. So there's certain places where trucks are hitting consistently. I often say that we have 21st century trucks operating on 19th century streets and 19th century street layouts. But we've also looked at the physical constraints as much as possible for the different towns and try to categorize those, as you can see on the right. Next, please. And we have truck restrictions. We've cataloged those in our region that have been approved by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. That map on the left is from their website, which is very convenient. If you want to know what truck exclusions are, you can get them right online from Mass DOT. Next, please. So in our study, we have put together a draft report, and we have some potential improvements. Some are in general improvements. Some are for specific areas. One of the big things today is using information systems. So we have so truckers, when they're in our region, they can go online, or they can use an app, and they can find different places to park, or they can do all their credentialing online. And they can look at also when the peak hours are, peak deliveries are, and if they can drive during times that are off peak. Other improvements that we recommended were obvious improvement to operations like signal timing and signal coordination in key corridors. And of course, the turning radii for wide trucks. This is always a problem, especially, as I said, in those areas where we have older layouts where the street systems were laid out previously. Bottlenecks and congestion, again, on specific routes. And through Brockton itself, there's always been a lack of east-west travel. And that's been an ongoing problem, as well as the railroad underpasses. And the interchanges I-495 as well as Route 24. Route 24 is notorious for not having it doesn't have acceleration or deceleration lanes, and that's important for trucks. Rest areas, especially for long distance truck drivers. That's not just a problem in Massachusetts. It's a national problem. Some states, many states have the same problem. And the last one is side guards on trucks to protect cyclists. And there's a picture of it on the left. What we've seen with bicyclists and tractor trailers is that when bicycles are on the right side and a trailer tries to make a turn, people get, unfortunately, underneath the wheels. And this is something new that's being tried to help prevent cyclists or even pedestrians from getting stuck under the wheels as the trucks turn. Next, please. This slide is about the rest stops in our region. We have on Route 24 at I-95, we have 2 service areas for trucks. And they have overnight parking and fuel restrooms and convenience store. There's about 9 spaces, and it's actually not adequate. You know, as casual observance, when we drive by there during the peak hour, it's always full. The 9 spaces are always full. In fact, these service plazas usually have like double the amount of trucks as they park along the side of the parking lot. And on the northbound side, they're actually on the ramp. But there are also other places in our region that for example, Walmart's will allow trucks to stay there overnight. So in map 21, there was a part of map 21 that requires states to address the shortage. It's called Jason's Law, to address the shortage of facilities for long distance truckers. And so Massachusetts is doing its part to try to look for those areas that could use improvements to overnight stays for trucks. Next, please. And this is our timeline. We're actually in June, July. We have developed our draft text, and our next step is to send it out to stakeholders. I want to thank Raisa for reviewing our report. She's already reviewed the report. Her and Michaela from Mass DOT. But we'll be getting our draft report out to stakeholders for review and revision. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Ray? Pam, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, a couple of comments. First, very well done, comprehensive report and presentation. Ray, thank you. I also wanted to mention, you mentioned the truck turning movements, and that's something that we struggle with a lot, especially now with complete streets. And it's a real balance to try to accommodate for the larger vehicles and also minimize crossings and make the streets more livable for bicyclists and pedestrians. So it's really a challenge in the design process to come up with a balance so that everybody can live on the same road together. And especially lately, it's really a struggle, but it's something that we're aware of. And, especially a higher order road, not the limited access highway, but a principal arterial is something that, does allow bicyclists and pedestrians to also accommodate truck traffic and comfortably is an issue, because if you don't, then it creates other problems. And I also wanted to mention the rest areas. That is also a challenge for Mass DOT, especially which isn't exactly what you were talking about, but the unmanned rest areas. We have had to close some of them because of just major issues with vandalism and littering, and there's a whole host of problems that are associated with them. And I know we are also looking at more commercial service areas, which is what you were, I think, talking about. And I don't think this has been rescinded, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but when the interstate system was first built in the 50s, there was some legislation that, depending on the funding that was used, that federal funding, that the commercial rest areas could not be installed on I think it was mostly the interstates, but I think Route 24 was grandfathered in and Route 3, but And, that's something that I think needs more looking into. I know if you go down to the southern states, there's a lot more availability, but I think it has to do with the original funding for the roadways when they were constructed.
All right, Andrew.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Pam's comment. I really appreciate the presentation, Ray. I think it's been obviously a very thorough and in-depth study, and I'm thankful to you for the work and to OCPC for funding this. And Pam, to your question, yeah, there is essentially the provision is that the interstate, there is not a provision for charging for services, charging money for services on the interstate. There's a prohibition against it, except for certain grandfathered routes that were built before the interstate system. So like I-90, I think has some exceptions, and you mentioned Route 3. There are a few others, but we're unique. Southern states and other states, I'm not sure. I believe they build rest areas kind of off the system and have a separate process for doing that. But truck parking is definitely another major topic of concern. I know we did host a workshop on truck parking with a number of the MPOs last year. So look forward to continued discussion and work on these topics. I did have, I guess, one question, Ray, which was related to trends in freight movement. Was there any analysis of the growth of like warehouses or Amazon facilities, those types of facilities in the region, and the impact of e-commerce?
What we did was we added to the map that our GIS manager made for us.
Oops, I think you got
Ray, I
muted.
think you muted yourself.
Sorry about that. So what we did was we have a map of our operations, distribution, warehouses. So when they came online, we've been keeping track of VIPA projects and just adding them to the map. We didn't really do anything as far as e-commerce, the impact of e-commerce on that. We've actually had growth in warehousing, but we didn't factor in anything about e-commerce taking away from. Actually, e-commerce would actually make it grow because you have more Amazon sites, but we just added them to the map basically that we had before.
Great.
All right. Are there any more questions for Ray? All right. Thank you, Ray. Good job. We'll move on to the next set of agenda items, which are administrative matters, other business, and date and time of next meetings. Charlie, you got some items you want to go over?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we go through some of our administrative items, before the MPO's information today, I'd like just to take a moment to recognize Go-Chung Lee of OCPC, who is celebrating his 1-year employment anniversary at OCPC today. And just on behalf of the staff, I just want to recognize Go-Chung, how great team member he is, and we're so thankful that he's here, and he's really been wonderful to work with, and we look forward to so many more years ahead of us. But congratulations, Go-Chung.
I should have shared the background with everyone, but I didn't have the time to. But congratulations, Go-Chung.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Yep.
All right.
So, hey, one way to celebrate Go-Chung's anniversary later in the week is Brockton Bike to Work Day. So this coming Friday from 7 a.m. to 8:30 at the BAT Intermodal Center. It's a Bike to Work Day event, and with the handouts and goodies from Mass Bike and CJ Cafe. So thanks to Kyle Mode and the team here for working with the city and BAT to orchestrate this event. So hope to see you there. Next slide. So May is Bay State Bike Month, and if you're interested in other bike events such as the Brockton Bike to Work Day and other areas around the Commonwealth, you can log on to that website listed in the staff report here for other bike events to participate in. Next slide. So the MBTA is working on a reimagining their bus system. It's called Better Bus, and as luck would have it, there's a series of public meetings coming up to learn and hear more about the initiative. At their website, on the next slide, I believe, there's a list of upcoming events, and yesterday they posted a draft map of their bus network and potential changes and schedules and whatnot. Sean Bailey of our team is going to be attending the meeting on the 24th, and I point out that there's a system-wide meeting on this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. on the 19th. Next slide. And speaking of freight, MassDOT has opened a new round of the IRAP grant application program. This is for projects that support or expand or improve rail or freight access, economic opportunity, safety, and job growth. Note that applications are due on June 9th. Next slide. Date and time of next meeting. We have a couple meetings upcoming. June 21st is the next meeting of the MPO. It'll be virtual and it'll be at 10 a.m. And just as a placeholder, if needed, some additional dates over the summertime. And that's what I have for updates for the MPO. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to add one more, which I kind of talked about before we all got on. That innovation conference is sold out in person. It's actually overcapped, so I'm trying to deal with that. So if you do want to participate, please sign up virtually. We still haven't announced the governor, lieutenant governor, because I need to sign up on something after I get off the phone with you all. So that will be coming shortly. So please be on the lookout for that if you want to hear that. And they will be both there on May 24th. So with that, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn, please?
I'll motion it. I'll second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
good Memorial Day weekend. Maybe I'll see some of you in person next week at the Innovation Conference. And stay safe. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.